Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG Podcast, episode number 156 of the show. I'm Ramon Mejia. I'm here to bring you the latest LootRPG news, reviews, and of course, author interviews. And this week I have 6 new reviews for you folks at home. That's going to include 1,000 Drunken Monkeys, book 2 in the Hero of Thera series, Viridian Gate Online, Doomforge, a LootRPG adventure, the Viridian Gate Archives, book number 6. Now this is the 6th book in that series. Apparently there's only going to be 8 in this main series. We'll talk about that a little bit later in the LootRPG news section though. Also reviewing this week, Raising Allies, new game minus book 2. Also, Path of the Necromancer, book number 1, a LootRPG series. I'm not sure if the author's trying to be doing his own brand, but it's a fun story. It's actually a LootRPG still, so don't worry. Also, Valhalla Online, book number 4. Finally, the 4th book is out. Hell Hath No Fury, a Ragnarok Saga LootRPG story. Then The Monolith, a LootRPG novel, Bloodseekers, book number 1. So 6 new reviews for you. Before we get into that, we're of course going to go into LitRPG news. And in LootRPG news, we're going to begin with the story of Travis Bagwell, author of the Awaken the Lane series. He's announced this week that the latest book in the series, Awaken the Lane Dominion, will be released on February the 28th. However, due to some unforeseen issues, the audiobook won't come out at the same time this time. Instead, it'll come out later at a later date. The author has been known for his simultaneous releases of the ebook versions and the audiobook formats, so it'll be slightly disappointing for some fans. But still, yay, new Awaken Online book. So yay. If you can't wait, chapters of the new book are of course available on the author's Patreon page. Of course, we'll have both those links in the show notes for you to go check out. In other LootRPG news, we have a new streaming interview from Mountain Dale Press. It was on Facebook. It was to promote their newest release, which is Into the Light by Christopher Johns. It was an interview with Dakota Crowd and of course Chris Johns on their Facebook page. It was fun to watch, to get into the author's process and see all the fans that ask questions. The novel's been doing really well, very consistently, about 800-ish on the Amazon sales charts, which is really good. That it's consistent. Usually it goes like you have a really good numbers the first day, and then it drops very steadily as the week goes on. But in this case, it's been very steady, which is much harder than doing good for a single day. So good for you, Christopher Johns. Congratulations, and of course, Mountain Dale Press. Also, another streaming announcement from another LootRPG company called Shadow Alley Press. It's more than a LootRPG author company, but James Hunter and Shadow Alley Press made some announcements this week in regards to upcoming projects from that company, including details about the end of the main Viridian Gate Online series. That's right, it has to end at some point, ladies and gentlemen. And also some series that are set in the same universe but written by different authors, and update some other stuff written by James A. Hunter. Some highlights from the video. I do encourage you to go watch it. It's fun to just hear James and his wife talk. But highlights for LootRPG stuff. VGO 6 is out now. We're reviewing it this week on the podcast. He also talks about the plans for the end of that series and how there are only going to be 8 books, but there may be more books for those characters that he's going to write. It'll just be a different big quest line. So instead of like saving the whole game world from like the bad AI and whatever the current quest line is, I'm going to just try to spoil it in case you haven't read it yet. But that main quest line will be finished with the 8th book, and then maybe potentially some other quest lines or some other threats to the universe or whatever that is. They're also going to have, of course, different authors who are writing new Viridian Gate series, but they're not by James A. Hunter anymore, including stuff that's going to come out this month and next month. There's going to be the Illusionist series, which will be started on pre-order. We have it in the upcoming list of LootRPG stories. It's going to be out on February the 12th, which is next week. We also have the Firebrand series. Their pre-order is up now currently on February the 26th. That will be out. Then the Alchemic Weaponeer series. That'll have a release date of March the 12th. I don't believe that pre-order is up, but you can double check. Also, in other non-VGO series, War God 3, is almost done, apparently. It will be titled Underworld. It'll be the last book in that particular series. Rogue Dungeon Book 2, the audiobook for that is out now. The third book is a work in progress, apparently. And there's also going to be a new, just independent dungeon series called Dungeon Bringer. It's apparently a LootRPG dungeon plus light harem aspects. It'll be available as soon as the cover art is finished. Apparently, they're just waiting on that. The actual story is all finished and edited. They're just waiting on cover art. So all kinds of great stuff coming out from Shadow Alley Press. So two great, LitRPG centric-ish publishing companies, Mountain Dew Press and Shadow Alley Press. So great stuff. In other news, in the Game Lit Society, Blaze Corbin, author of the Devilers LLC series, Nora Hazard's Secret of the Old Ones, First Song, and Asgard Awakening. He has a long list of stuff. He's announced this week that he'll be taking a step back from the Game Lit Society group that he founded on Facebook. The group was originally founded as an alternative place for authors and readers to meet and talk about the genres they love, LitRPG and Game Lit. The group has grown over to over 5,000 people and is very active with people posting on a daily basis. Blaze wrote that while he won't be an active moderator in the group anymore, he'll still maintain responsibility for 1, the Game Lit Fiction List, and 2, the yearly philanthropy for Shriners. Blaze plans to focus on his writing, managing his author group, and continuing to build the Game LitRPG website. There's a link below if you want to read the full statement from the author. It's nice. Apparently he had a harder time writing it than he thought he would. But while it's sad, personally, to see Blaze take a step back from the group and the subgenre that he helped found, he really did come up with... Him and some other authors came up with the genre title Game Lit as an alternative to LitRPG. It really makes perfect sense that he wants to devote more time to writing. That's actually what's going to pay his bills. And managing a large Facebook group does take a whole lot of time. So I completely understand. And we certainly wish Blaze the best luck. He's not like dying or anything, folks. He's just choosing to focus on writing. And, we all owe his writing. And I love the guy personally. Friend of ours on the show, friend of mine. So wish him luck and hope to read more stories as soon as possible. Okay, on to stuff that is out now that I haven't had a chance to read. Here we go. We're going to start off with Adventures Pod, book 5 of the Adventures on Brad series that is out now. Also is Arcane Kingdom Online. That's entitled Dark Magic. That's the second book in that series. Vamp Quest, a shorter story. I think it's less than 150 pages. It is free. Out free, that's FREE, until February the 8th, 2019, at least in the US. Sometimes those promotional things change depending on the country you're in, but go check it out. It does have LitRPG stuff in there, RPG stuff, so I haven't read it, but it is out. Also out is Legend of the Swordbearer, Tempest Chronicles book number 1. So those are stuff that came out this week. Haven't a chance to read. On to new LitRPG audiobooks. There are actually more LitRPG audiobooks, including The Pantheon Moves, Amarillo book number 10. That's out as an audiobook for fans of that series. Also, book number 11. That's right. Book 10 and 11 are out about the same time. They both released within, I think, days of each other. That's called Empire Burning, and that'll actually finish off the entire Amaryllis series. So you have 11 full audiobooks to enjoy if you're a fan of the series. If you've been trying to catch up, if you want to binge listen, that's a lot of stuff. Like, those books are not tiny either. Like, these are lots and lots of hours of good LitRPG science fiction stuff. Okay, also as an audiobook, Dungeon Lord Abominable Creatures, The Race Hunt book number 3, written by Hugo Huesca. So the third book in that series is out as an audiobook now. Also out is Dead Must Die, a novella of the Realms. The Realms, Master of the Dungeons, book number 1. This is from C.M. Carney. This was a novella for his other main series in the genre. It's a shorter story. It's a novella, so keep that in mind. But it is out as an audiobook. Also out as an audiobook is Blood Eye, Land of Dreams, book number 1. I enjoyed that particular series as an ebook. Haven't had a chance to listen to the audiobook, but it is out. Also out as an audiobook is Free Haven Online, Lady Thunderlord into Hades, a LitRPG adventure. So all kinds of great stuff apparently out as audiobooks as well. Okay, on to upcoming LitRPG. This is just where I read off the stuff that I know is coming out in the near future, including new stuff from Mountain Dew Press and also Shadow Alley Press. They send me notifications saying, "Oh, we're going to release them these days, even if there's not a pre-order yet. That's our plan." So a lot of those things. So feel free to skip ahead if you don't want to listen to it. But there are new additions to this list. Sacrificial Pieces, the game, book number 3 it should be out very soon. If it's not out by the time he reaches his post, according to the author, supposed to come out on February the 8th. I hope it does. I really do cross my fingers. This is one of my favorite series. This is one of the few series that has gotten like a 9 out of 10 for me. I do enjoy it a lot. I hope to read it very soon. But of course, it's no actual pre-orders. It's just the author saying. Out on February the 11th, there's going to be Underworld Sanctuary from Paulos Thorn. This is the third book in that series. Also, according to the author, so no actual pre-order, but the author said he plans to release on February the 11th. One of the side series in the Viridian Gate, well, a side series, but one of the other series in the VGO universe is out on February the 12th. Viridian Gate Online, Nomad Soul in the Illusionist book series. Again, that's not written by the main author, James A. Hunter. It'll be written instead by DJ Bowden. So there we go. If you want to check out some of his stuff, you actually can read a short story, which is probably tied to this, in the Viridian Online short story series. One of the authors in there was the same guy. So if you want to see how he writes and what the story might be about, that'll be your chance. Also out on February the 14th, it'll be the Good series book number 4 for The Loot. There you go. Super fun series. Out on February the 14th, it'll be Gemini Crossing, a fantasy LitRPG game of adventure, Enora Online book number 1. I don't know nothing about this, but it's out and it says LitRPG, so we'll wait and see. Also out on February the 15th, it'll be C.M. Carney's The Realms series, book number 4, Scourge of Souls, 4th book in that series. On February the 15th, if you're a fan of the Somnia Online series, book number 4 will be out on February the 15th, called Dissonance. On February the 15th, it'll be Equalizer, Ether Collapse book number 1. This is another book from Mountain Press. It'll be out on again February the 15th. On February the 19th, it'll be Star Exile Singularity, a sci-fi LitRPG adventure from Drew Cordell, if you're familiar with his work. Out on February the 25th, it'll be Evil Born book number 2. On February the 26th, Cat's Game book number 1. This is the other series from Shadow Alley Press, again, another VGO universe series called Firebrand, the Firebrand series, book number 1, out on February the 26th, 2019. Awaken Online, we talked about the author saying that he's going to publish on February the 28th, assuming everything goes well, called Awaken Online Dominion. There's no cover art for that one yet. The author hasn't chosen it, apparently. He has several options, but so I have no cover art for you, but it is here in the listings. On February the 29th, as far as I'm aware, it'll be Dark Sun Survival by Dave Wilmarth. This is a new series for the author. It is a little more post-apocalyptic. We'll have to see how that works. A post-apocalyptic RPG kind of thing going on. I had a chance to peek at it a little bit. I haven't finished the whole story. I haven't gotten the final version yet, so I'm looking forward to reading this one as well. He might move the release date potentially, so I'll let you know if that happens. On March the 5th, it'll be The Black Turtle, the Artar Chronicles, book number 2. On March the 12th, 2019, it'll be, again, that third Reading Gate Online series written by a different author called Vindication, the Alchemic Weaponer series, book number 1. That'll be out on March the 12th. I don't believe it has a pre-order link yet, but once it does, I'll make sure to drop that in our notes. On March the 18th, Absolute Zero, Adam Online, book number 1. Then March the 25th, The Final Trial, Level Up, book number 3. March the 27th, Dark World Transformation, book number 2, another Russian translation. And then April the 10th, all the way out in April, it'll be Edge of the Abyss, Respawn Trials, book number 1, written by Andrei Levitny. And last but not least, April 22nd, written by Dan Tugalov, another Russian translation, Class A Threat, Disgardium, book number 1. And that's everything I know about the near future, folks. All the stuff that I know that's coming out. On to new releases and reviews. And in new releases and reviews, folks, this is where we get into our review stuff. We're going to start with 1,000 Drunken Monkeys, book 2 in the Hero of Thera series, written by Eric Nyland. It is 336 pages, $5.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And I just realized the cover art here is green, which is the same color as my green screen. So this picture might appear a little weird. But here we go. It is, again, 336 pages, $5.09, available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. The Kingdom of Thera, it says, continue playing the game, yes or no? The kingdom of Thera is a crossroads to many worlds and realities. Here, a secret war between the gods plays out via their proxy mortal champions. These player champions use all the augmented reality interfaces and game mechanics that role-playing and video gamers know and love. Join Hector, Saint Savage, Marine, and martial artist extraordinaire. Morgana Nox, a shape-shifting jewelry thief and trickster. And the cantankerous dwarf Elmac Argason, as they punch, blast, stab, and slither their way through the second Hero of Thera novel. Can they outwit, outfight, and outrun assassins? The Imperial Knight Champions of Chaos? Feisty gnomes with slide rules? A horde of 1,000 inebriated simians? There's only one way to find out. So there we go. This is just fun. It's an entertaining story. A very entertaining sequel to Hero of Thera, the first book in the series. However, this one's not quite as epic in scale. It is a very good action adventure story. There's good RPG leveling, a great sense of humor, which is kind of a hallmark for this particular series so far. There's an introduction of plot lines for the rest of this series, but this is mostly a good action adventure story that wraps up the 1,000 Drunken Monkeys quest line that was established in book 1. It's funny, the action is well written, and the story seems to zip by. It's really entertaining. Like, I'll be honest, I finished this in one sitting. Even though it's 366 pages, it goes like that. It's really super engaging. However, again, it's not as epic in scale as book 1. Book 1, sometimes this is the case when it happens with the writer. They're not sure if their story is going to do well, and so they write one first story as almost this encapsulated story with potential like teasers for a series if it does well, and that's kind of what happens with it. So there's this big like save the world storyline in book 1, and that was all very nice. However, in book 2 feels like almost like the side adventure, in that it doesn't have much to do with like saving the universe anymore. But it still has the same characters. It has all the same good banter and action, adventure, and comedy and funny, sense of humor and everything. But it is a little more slice of life, and the main character is just kind of following a quest line and dealing with a few new introduced plot lines. But it is definitely not as, again, big and epic and saving the worldy as book 1 was. So just manage your expectation. I think you'll have a really good time. But then I did. Once I realized that what it's going to be, I had a really good time. I give it a 7.8 out of 10, which is like a good score. It's very near the 8-ish. So it's a very good story. Okay, on to our second review, Viridian Gate Online Doom Forge, a little bit adventure, the Viridian Gate Archives book number 6, written by J.A. Hunter. It is 374 pages, $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. February 2048. Jack and the crew of the Crimson Alliance have finally made it back from the realm of order, but the threat to Elgard is deadlier than ever. Bolgarth incursions are increasing, dungeons falling in droves, towers and cities ravaged by Darklings, players and NPCs who have willingly sided with the Dark overmine Thantos. But thanks to a priceless artifact Jack found after defeating the Lich Priest, there might be a glimmer of hope on the horizon. Jack and the company have unearthed a Doom Forge relic, one part of an ancient weapon capable of killing even a god. But to assemble the legendary god killer, they'll need to find the other relics and locate the fabled Doom Forge of the dwarven godling Calikius, all while unraveling a mystery 500 years in the making. So there we go. It's a very epic sounding storyline, and it is. As the series has continued, each book gets bigger and more epic in scope. And for some readers, that's going to be really great and amazing. I personally prefer smaller storyline, like a very more intimate story, like only a couple characters. And this one kind of flops back and forth between like larger battles and epic stuff and that. There are some very nice moments in the story where it's just like a little glimpse at the main character's past, a few like dreams about his backstory, which I thought were really well done. But overall, this is a much bigger story, and as it should be. The story is getting more epic until like the end of the series, which apparently will be in book 8 for the main series, I should say, and this story quest line. This is another well-told video series. The action adventure still keeps you hanging on and wanting to turn one more page. The series is taking on, again, more of a cyberpunk aspect with rogue AI, secret code weapons, but it's still very entertaining. This is one of the things you noticed probably from starting book 5, where it is getting more of a cyberpunk, larger thematic thing going on here, and that continues in book 6, and I'm assuming it'll get more prominent in 7 and 8 as like the story shifts from just like, oh, a guy wanting to level to like, oh, saving this entire game world from from these Rogue AI and from a bunch of other things like that. So, which is a little more cyberpunk in my, to me. There are still mysteries going on in the storyline, which I'm hoping will be solved at some point and revealed to characters. But it's very good. It's a fun read. I had a good time with it. Not my favorite in the series, but still very good and very much will satisfy most readers. It gets a score of 7.5 out of 10. That's Viridian Gate Online Doom Forward, book 6 in the series, so the score is 7.5 out of 10. Good. Next, it'll be Raising Allies, New Game Minus Book 2, written by Sarah Lynn. It is 349 pages. It is $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Bloodwraith was a villain who hated adventurers until he found himself transferred into the body of one. Trapped without his magic, he discovered that alien beings were using his reality as a game, and he had just become a player. Teaming up with the glitched NPC and other adventurers, he has no choice but to learn the truth about himself and his world. Finally free of obligations, Bloodwraith can recover his necromancy and strike back against the beings controlling his world. Little does he know that one of them is now hunting for him. His old adventurer nemesis is still alive in his old body. Not only does the adventurer plan to get his body back, but he's not going to play fair to get it. Journeying into a new city with new rivals and potential allies, Bloodwraith will be challenged in many ways. But in the end, he'll be facing his past life, and this time he will need to decide what it is he really wants. So there you go. Actually, this is, I gotta say that Sarah Lynn is probably one of my top favorite new LitRPG authors of 2018. Her and Eric Ugland were probably, they're easily in the top 5. And it's not just that they have good book 1s, they actually have good book 2s and 3s and everything else. So this is the second book in this series, and honestly, it's better than the book 1 in a lot of ways. It's more streamlined to me, and I think that's the best thing. Like, it has all the stuff I loved about book 1, and it just kind of streamlines the whole process. And most of that is because the author doesn't have to set up the premise of the book anymore. So it's really just like, as soon as you open the book 2, jumps right into action and adventure. You already kind of understand the situation of the body swapping thing going on. And you just get all the good action adventure, good RPG leveling, meta commentary about what it'd be like to live with notification boxes, except that you're from the fantasy world, so they feel very artificial. And again, all that stuff I really liked. The dungeon diving, game theorizing stuff, like trying to build your character so it does what you want it to do, and figuring out, from a perspective, not from a gamer, but from somebody who lives essentially in a medieval fantasy world, and the game stuff gets imposed upon them, and they have to figure out, okay, what do these boxes mean? What do they do? How can we trust them? How can we manipulate them? How can we use them to gain power that we want? And it's really entertaining. I love the commentary about like the metazation of like that game notification boxes. And this time I think, again, the story is better because the villain is better. Like, ultimately, that's one of the things I wouldn't say I didn't like, but I was less satisfied with from book 1, in that the villain felt a little OP. He felt a little bit out there. He felt like he didn't belong. There's a little more of a cyberpunk aspect there. In book 2, this villain is so much better. I'm not saying he's so much entertaining. He's so much easier to just hate, or dislike, I should say. And it made it a better read to me. Not quite enough to get an 8 out of 10, but super close. This one actually going to get a score of 7.9 out of 10. And again, like I said, this author Sarah Lynn and Eric Ugland are probably my favorite new authors of 2018, because that's when their books came out, their first books, I should say. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else they can do. And again, book 2 from both those authors were both very good, and better, obviously, in book 1. So yeah, thanks, Sarah Lynn, for writing a book. That's Raising Allies, New Game Minus Book number 2, with an easy score of 7.9 out of 10. There you go. Okay, next we have Path of the Necromancer, book number 1, a LootRPG series from Dick Davis. This is 246 pages, $2.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. They say that death is the end, but that isn't true if you're a necromancer. When Jacob graduates from the Queen's Magic Academy as a necromancer, he earns a license to raise things from the dead. His instructors believe that his dark childhood makes him too dangerous to be a necromancer, and some didn't want him to graduate. Jacob will do anything to prove them wrong. His first mission is to recover the corpse of a traitor, resurrect him, and find out what secrets he told the enemy. He knows he's in deep when he learns that the traitor's body is missing, and worse, he isn't the only person looking for it. Mages, necromancers, cannibals, and all warriors stand in his way as he fights to find the truth. Trapped in a deadly land, surrounded by hostiles, Jacob will have to scavenge weapons and loot from the enemies he kills, learn new necromancy spells, and use them in ways other necromancers have never dreamed of. Okay. Jack Davis as an author is sometimes a mixed bag. Like, some of his stuff as LitRPG is super great. Sometimes it's not. And this one definitely goes towards the better stuff, to be honest. This is probably one of my favorite reads from the author. This is an entertaining read. And I think the thing I like the most about it is that it creates a very interesting culture around being a necromancer. I'm going to be honest. Some of this is part of my love for D&D in general, and that there was an Eberron campaign for the 3.5 series of Dungeons and Dragons, where there was a whole like nation in that campaign setting for a nation that used necromancy to raise armies and to defend themselves, and necromancy was a part of the culture, and that's what this story really reminds me of. So that might be part of why I'm fully engaged and I like the story so much. But the author really does try to set up this fantasy universe. And again, this is not transported to a game world. This is not trapped in a game or anything. This is an independent fantasy RPG world where people gather strength and they level up and they do things like that. All the RPG stuff is very much met with it's incorporated into the regular culture of this world. The story leans a little bit more towards fantasy than LitRPG, but it is definitely a LitRPG story. You might call it light a LitRPG, I guess. It again revolves around a fantasy world. Necromancy is a part of a particular nation's culture, and it's no different than being a blacksmith or a soldier in this country. The main character is summoned as government as a new necromancer with his mentor to recover a body of a traitor and to see what he sold to the government by raising him from the dead. Of course, things don't go as planned. Like I said, the author does a really good job of world building, which is one of those things I think is harder to do, but he does a good job on this one. And both the Necromancer group and the Kaleshi group feel culturally fleshed out. There's a lot of time spent using essentially the main character and a secondary character in conversation and just talking about the differences in their views of death and their cultural views and their like nationality views of using necromancy and how each side views the other differently and how they feel like they're both weird, but they their own cultures feel very normal to themselves. And I think that those are very good and interesting conversations because it allows you to see the character's point of view and it makes you engage, it makes you connected to those characters, which is again probably one of the things I like the most about this particular story. There are good adventure elements in the story. There's a very clear goal for the main character. This isn't slice of life, which is very much could have been had the author not had like very clear goals for the main character and then recovering that traitor's body and all the pathways that leads there. But this is a very plot-driven story. The main character has a thing to do. Things get in the way, but he overcomes those odds and all that kind of stuff. There are also some very interesting antagonists. The main author does show their points of view, so you get into a backstory, so they're not like flat villain characters. They're a little bit complex, and they're actually relatable to a degree, which is also a positive for me. The RPG stuff in the story is not the main focus. So if you want something that's super crunchy and just want all about leveling and maximizing skills and min-maxing, this isn't it. It really isn't. There are consistent RPG elements that are used to describe how the main character grows in power. The main character increases his necromancy powers by gathering energy from the dead and using that energy to fuel his spells, for which he gains necromancy experience, which eventually gets high enough that he can raise his level, and it gives him access to more potent spells. There are also lots of spell and item descriptions in the story, so it's not. But again, those aspects aren't the focus. It's about his goals, the cultural exploration, and also, of course, the action adventure stuff of having a goal and doing it. Even though the story end of the story, it felt a little rushed in like how it was resolved. It wasn't like enough to ruin the story, but it was like, oh, that feels rushed. The same was like, oh, okay, the story has to end at some point. Overall, it's still a very entertaining read. For me, it gets a score 7.6 out of 10, and that's good. So, good story. Score 7.6 out of 10 for Path of the Necromancer, book number 1, a LootRPG series. So, there you go. Next, we have Valhalla Online, book number 4, Hell Hath No Fury, a Ragnarok Saga LitRPG story, written by Kevin McLaughlin. It is 205 pages, $3.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. Here's the author's description. Trapped between two goddesses is the worst rock and a hard place Samantha has ever run into. The fourth book of Valhalla Online series from USA Today bestselling author. Even worse, the goddesses are really advanced AIs, artificial intelligences. One of them is plotting to go all Skynet on the world, and it's up to Sam and her friends to put a stop to it. Winning this battle isn't just about staying alive or solving a mystery. This time, everything is at stake. If Samantha fails, the outside world will burn, and everyone she ever knew or loved outside of Valhalla will die. So there we go. Okay, this one's a little interesting. For one, you might not recognize the cover of the series because the entire Valhalla Online series has new cover art, and this is the fourth book in the series. The author recently redid all the cover art, so they're all more in line with his other series, which is Ragnarok Saga. The author says in the back matter that it was originally planned that the fourth book, this one, was really planned to be the last book in the series, but he decided one more book was needed to knock out like the last storylines and tie up all the loose ends, but also like tied into his military sci-fi space series, the Ragnarok series. Book 3 in the series was released almost a year and a half ago. That's a very long time to wait for a new series. And it kind of shows in a lot of ways in book 4. This story feels tonally different from the other books in the series. It's the lightest in terms of RPG mechanics, with mentions that skills and levels increase and some notifications, but again, it's not a very big part of the story. The big revelations of book 3 regarding the MCs becoming the main character really shifted the story from like a story revolving around a game and like this big goal of like traveling through 9 realms so that she can contact the outside world and see what's happening with her body and why she's trapped here. But also like each realm had this own like game verse to try to kind of learn and improve and master before she could move on. All that's gone. Like it really is. Like none of that really matters anymore. Instead, there's a more of a cyberpunk theme that dominates the story, about defeating the bad AI before it's strong enough to escape Valhalla Online and possibly wipe out mankind. That's not spoilery. It's in the novel description. And that's more of what this is now. So less LitRPG depth. It's still there. It's there enough, I guess, that it's still LitRPG, but it's really not the focus. Like leveling up is not as big of a deal or important to the story as it was in books 1 through 3. And that might be good for some readers. For other readers, it might be a shift that they don't enjoy. I can't say I didn't mind it. I could always kind of tell that you can kind of tell that the author, books 1 through 3, did okay as far as like I think sales go. And so he focused on a sci-fi space LitRPG series or sci-fi series, and it's coming back to kind of cap these up and also tie it into that other series. And so books 4 and 5 are kind of going to be the transitionary period between a straightforward LitRPG series with like lots of numbers and RPG stuff, and shifting it towards that sci-fi space series. And so there's going to be a transitionary period where it's, you're losing all the RPG stuff and it's going to become more cyberpunk and science fiction. So we can transition into that other series, which as far as I'm aware, isn't LitRPG at all. It's really, I haven't read it. I don't know for sure. But I'm pretty sure it advertises as just like sci-fi space stuff. And so this is still an entertaining story. It's just not because of the RPG elements. There's enough here that again barely qualifies as LitRPG, but you can tell that those elements are just disappearing as you get into as this is the end of the series basically of the LitRPG series, I should say. So good action, just no more game stuff in the RPG department really. So it's a score of 7.1 out of 10. I still had a good time with it. That's 7.1 out of 10 for Valhalla Online, book number 4, Hell Hath No Fury, a Ragnarok Saga LitRPG story. So there you go. Okay, last review, folks. The Monolith, a LitRPG novel, Bloodseekers, book number 1, written by Stephen Roque. Maybe Roark. Sorry, man. It is 484 pages. It's a big one. $4.99, appropriately priced. Available on Kindle Unlimited. Okay, there's the author's description. You will die. That's what the developers of Bloodseekers promised. The most challenging MMO ever created. That's what they said. Taglines like, not your granddaddy's game, and only for the hardest of the hardcore, had gamers going crazy. Set in a dark, gothic, Lovecraftian world with fully realized AI NPCs, gamers were desperate to get their hands on the game and dive in, and Clay was one of them. It was going to be tough, but he was ready for it. what he wasn't ready for was the countless players having their minds hijacked and being transformed into hostile zombie-like creatures filled with nothing but hate, who attack anyone on sight. They became known as the Bloodless. And now Clay's best friend is among them. Ray moved across the country when they were 12, but they kept in touch online. And when Bloodseekers was released, they were both ready to face the new challenge together. But now Ray has been possessed by the mysterious plague, her mind held hostage with no sign of a cure. To make things worse, Clay's mind is plagued by visions of a mysterious black monolith that has appeared in the center of the highest level zone in the game, a place no one has ever come close to reaching. Some think it will provide answers, others say it will only lead to more questions. Who is behind all this? Why are people's minds being taken, and what will it take to bring them back? How many more people will be lost when no one is able to log out? Nothing is certain, but if there's any chance that reaching the monolith will bring Ray back, then Clay will do everything he can to reach it. So there you go. That's a long novel description, but it is accurate. Okay, this is from the author of Call of Catherian. It's a new LitRPG story inspired from video games like Dark Souls and Bloodline. And if you've ever read those stories, you're going to find a lot of like familiar gameplay elements here. The story revolves around Clay/Rand, which is his gamer tag, who is one of the few players of Bloodseekers that is immune to the trapped in the game issue that arises on launch day. Only his best friend Ray isn't so lucky, so he goes back in and faces all the challenges of this intentionally difficult game world so that he can level up and figure out how to save his friend. So that's essentially the premise of the story, most of which is described in the novel description. The early part of the story is mostly grinding, like it's mostly monster grinding for experience points, and they're not called experience points here, they're called quintessence, which is again more in line with like the Bloodborne and the Dark Souls, pull of mythology and in-game mechanics. There is still leveling, and that's kind of the focus of that first, I don't want to say like half of the story. There are still like little story elements that pop up here and there, but mostly that's what the story is on the whole. There's a bunch of good action adventure, all kinds of leveling and getting new powers and getting equipment and item descriptions and figuring out how, he wants to maximize and play his character and figuring out his play style, all the good stuff. All that stuff is here. And that's what like I want to say like maybe 70% of the story is that. And then there's like this cyberpunk theme. Like people are trapped in the game and he has to find a way to get out, but he's uniquely qualified among him and like a smaller group of people to like figure out what's wrong with the people and try to make progress on fixing things potentially and exploring the world. And that's kind of the other 30% of the story sprinkled out throughout the entire novel. But a lot of it is really just good action, good adventure, good descriptions, smart use of powers, but it's a very action adventure-y focused. The game mechanics are going to be pretty familiar to anyone who's played Dark Souls and Bloodborne. There are stats and levels that can be increased by gathering quintessence, the game's version of XP, by defeating monsters, which is gained from defeating monsters rather than completing quests. It can be spent on special items, new weapons, health potions, and other things, which is, again, another pull from those games. There are, again, lots of items, skills, ability descriptions, as well as damage notifications, and it's more of a crunchy LitRPG story for those of you who like those kind of things. This is here. Overall, the story is entertaining. Again, it pulls from Dark Souls and Bloodline. There's even a bit of a Matrix mixed into the story. Like there are definitely some Matrix jokes mixed into the story. If you like that movie like I do, I was like, oh, that's funny. But it's just a part of the story. I thought it was neat. Again, this is very action focused, which worked for me. It might not work for everybody though. There is also a bit of a cliffhanger, which is going to annoy some readers. I know it is. Everybody has different things. I don't really mind. I plan to read book 2, but some readers are like, oh, I can't believe you did that. So just letting you know in advance. For me, it gets a score of 7.4 out of 10. Entertaining, action focused. Some reviewers have called it a little horror related just because of the way the monsters are described, and they're very creepy monsters. I don't think it's really horror-ish to me. Like things that are intentionally like super psychologically scarring in some ways are horror-ish, and this was just like, oh, these are just weird, gross monsters with like, undead stuff, and they're all very unique monsters, but it's not real horror-ish to me. Just there you go. So score 7.4 out of 10. The Monolith, a LitRPG novel, Bloodseekers, book number 1. I enjoyed it, so yay. And that's it. We're done. That's the show, folks. It's all done. Like it's almost a record, I think, for 6 reviews, little over 40 minutes. Not bad. Thanks for hanging out with us, ladies and gentlemen. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, our webpage, a bunch of other links in the show notes where you can follow us if you want to support the podcast this week. Make sure you follow us on Facebook at LitRPG Podcast. Facebook.com/LitRPG Podcast, where you can get all the written reviews to the show as well as seeing the video every single week as you scroll through Facebook. So thanks a lot. If you enjoy the podcast and want to support us in any way, shape, or form, help keep the show ad-free and free of ads and all the good stuff, you can find out all the ways to support us at litrpgpodcast.com/support. But again, thanks for hanging out with me, folks. Until we can hang out again, remember to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.